So who's on the show this week, Ross?
Bobby Allen.
Bobby Allen on the show. So you will hear him in studio.
Yeah, that is rare in and of itself at this point in the show for us to have a studio guest versus on the phone is always way more fun for us because we can actually see the person's face and interact with them. And Bobby, such a great interview.
Yeah.
Some great storytelling. I think we only made him cry twice. You'll hear talking about Logan and Jacob a little bit, but of course, so you'll hear us say this in the interview, but we recorded this the Friday morning of World Finals weekend, so we go into a lot of Bobby's backstory coming from Florida, getting to Pennsylvania, going into business for himself, racing for a living. A lot of just really, really cool, some really, really funny stories that you'll get to hear today.
Yep. Well, push the button, Ross.
Press play.
Right now, Bobby Allen starting about a turn. Look at Bobby Allen going down low. Swindell way up high. Down into turn number 3. Swindell on the throttle all the way. Scruffy hangs down low. The white flag is out. Bobby Allen, one of the most popular drivers ever at the Knoxville National. The classic underdog is leading Sammy Swindell toward what could be the biggest payday of Bobby Allen's life. He could run out half a season on 35 grand. Bobby Allen, the new king of Knoxville.
Well, join us in studio today, the man himself, Bobby Allen. First off, before we get too far, we have to talk about yesterday's announcement for you guys. As we are recording this, it is World Finals week. Dryden coming on board with both the boys for the next 2 years. Is this kind of a dream realized moment for you guys to have this level of support for your operation?
You could say it's that way. We've been doing this for 5 years, and I've been doing it my whole life, and you have the dream that this might happen, but for it to happen, and like I said yesterday, it happened, I would say, at about the right time, because we've gained 5 years of experience. Jacob had no experience when we started, and he came alive in the middle of the summer, and so the timing was right, because now I feel like we can do them a good job, and the sponsorship will help us be able to get the things that I think that it takes to do the job right. So yes, definitely.
What kind of, those things that you think you have to get to do it right? What are those resources that this opens up to you now, having these kind of resources at your disposal?
Well, my nephew Michael Newman, builds our motors, and him and I together. I was always good about motors myself anyway, but Don Ott helped us in the beginning. Charlie Garrett helped us on parts. So I kind of know what some of the motors guys run, and I'm good about what I want to do. Well, the biggest thing is for what I say to fight these guys, what I call fight them, it's the bigger teams to win the races all the time consistently. Our motors, we only had a couple motors each. So they'd run down to be wore out, and then you got to fight back for it. Well, I feel like now, between our motor program and what we know about the motors, and riding and getting behind us here, I'm going to be able to keep. I feel like the boys won't run out of good motors. They're going to be there all the time. We have several motors right now, but this will let me not run them so long, or run them when we think, this thing's going to blow up, but we got to still run it to keep going. I might be able to pull back on some of that. It might cure some of the problems we had of stuff being wore out, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, Triple X gives us cars, DMI gives us. Fixes up on rears. We're really lucky about product sponsors. They help us a lot. This will put the caption on it and smooth it out better, because I know how to, if somebody helps you out, I know how to take what they help you out and almost double it. So that's something I've learned through the years. And like I told them, we don't want to get out of range. We want to do it the same way we're doing. I just want to polish the motor. So I feel like when we come to the racetrack, we'll be even with everybody all the time.
Looking over your guys' season this year, Logan is 6th in points, couple wins. Jacob Wright knocking on the top 10, through the year, and has had opportunities this year to win races. But how do you feel about your season overall with both guys?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I know. I feel it was good. I kind of put a little prediction out there, and I predicted Logan was going to run the top 5 or run 5th. Jacob was going to make the top 10. Well, going to Well, back a couple years ago, I blew my truck up, so that killed our season. We didn't have any motors in; we were wore out and all that, so that made us have a terrible season, especially Jacob, because he's going to get the lesser of the stuff because Logan was the money man. This year we go to California, and it rains out every race. Well, there we were. We did. Jennifer Marshall helped us this year, and it was a great help because we couldn't have made it through California, and she helped us build a motor for Logan. But the rain still put me way behind on money to be able to race. It put a lot of guys behind, I'm sure, because it was tough to make it through that. So I don't know, I lost my concentration, but I feel like right now that we're going to be able to keep. Oh, you asked me how the year was. It was good because all of a sudden, in the middle of the year, I put a motor in Jacob's car, and all of a sudden he started shining. And then we had the one motor. We had trouble with motors this year, in and out a little bit of not knowing the right things with them. And Logan went through a period of a dry spell. Then all of a sudden, when he had a motor in that he liked, boom, he was right there for fast times, right there, right up front about every race. So we know what we have now. So we look at that as that with Dryden here, we're going to be able to capitalize on that. And really, hopefully, we have a super year. We had a great year.
You guys are 5 years now into your run here with Logan and Jacob full time on the road with the Outlaws. How has their progression as drivers been to watch for you or over these years out touring the country?
Well, I watch them every year, and every year they do progress. They learn more about. I try to teach them or taught them how to set their cars up, and they're starting to be really good at that. They're different levels. I mean, Logan had a few more years' experience than Jacob, so he goes the next level faster. And then once you start getting there, like Jacob did, all of a sudden them levels come faster and easier. So every year they learn a little bit more about passing, how to run, learn about restarts, time trials, and they're definitely progressing every year. And I think this year, that's what I said, by Dryden come along this year, they're going to get way better results if they'd have came along 3 years ago.
You guys run both teams out of one trailer. Is that easier or is it harder for a team like you guys?
For me, it's easier. Well, that's one of the ways I made it because you basically, if you're in the top 10, you get $500 a car. So every time I pull into the gate, I'm getting $1,000 and free pit passes. So for me, plus it's half the fuel. That's how we've done it. We cut every corner. We use a lot of used tires, cut the corners. The boys drive for less. They drove almost for nothing in the beginning, and now they're up to getting a better percentage than they got before. They're not like the top guys, but they're getting there and they're being able to do it.
When they have a bad night or a rough night, are you hard on them? Do you say, you screwed this up, we need to do better on this, or do you kind of let them go and kind of let them learn those lessons on their own?
Well, I do both. If things are bad, I try to tell them what I feel like I did wrong. But I never push anybody. I drove, and I never push. I might suggest things because I know that anybody that drives or races, they try to do the best they can at what they can. You got to find out why you didn't feel right, or maybe you might say to them, I think if you run this little bit part of the racetrack here, you might have qualified better. Because with the Outlaws, qualifying is really important, and I might say something to them like that. Sometimes they don't like it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes I'm supposed to wait a day, but I don't.
So we want to go back to the beginning and kind of take, go through your journey as a driver and how you kind of got to where you are today. But you're a kid from Florida. Your dad raced on the beach at Daytona. Do you remember seeing him do that?
I don't remember seeing him race. I do remember, because back then you drove the race car to the racetrack, and I remember him pulling up in front of my grandmother's house, and we all climbed in it, and we're going down the road, and I somebody said they could smell something. They said, well, that's just Robert. Well, the floor mat had that old-time stuff that it kind of just fizzed, but it was a floor mat burner. It wasn't me stinking.
What made you want to get involved in racing back then? Did you see him, with his race cars and stuff, and that made you want to get involved, or what?
Well, it probably was that. Back when he did, I never seen him. No, that wasn't it. But I was always around guys that raced. Go-karts just became of age right then. Well, first it was half midgets, and Jim Rathman, who was a speedway car driver, they bought these half midget race cars, and my dad had always had me built me little cars. I ran out in a big field, so when I ran them, I knew what was going on. Had an adaptation to it, and so I raced them, and I won all the races in the half midgets. And then go-karts come alive, and I ran them things. I became a world's go-kart champion for really 3 years, class champion and 2 times world champion. And so through that, well, back then Young was 16. And if you told me I wasn't going to Indianapolis, you were nuts, because I thought I was Mr. Race Driver, but there's a lot more to it than that. And I went from there. Well, actually, that's how I went north. I read about how they ran in Pennsylvania. They ran 3 times a week, and at that time, you had to be 21 to run USAC. And I figured I could go up there and learn how to run the dirt tracks. That's what you did. You ran dirt tracks, and then you went to speedway cars.
What did the Pennsylvania dirt racing scene look like at that time? I mean, what cars were running? What racetracks did you guys race at?
Well, when I first went north, the cars were all 30 by 90s. They weren't sprint cars, but that's kind of a basic sprint car. Went to Williams Grove, Lincoln Speedway, Susquehanna, just some tracks there. They ran 3 times a week, paid $500 a week. I started in Florida on asphalt down at Medley and West Palm and Hialeah, and that was macadam tracks. And like I said, I wanted to go to Indy at that time. Sprint cars was the way to go, and that was dirt track, so I went there to run.
When you made that move north from Florida to Pennsylvania, what kind of led you to that Hanover area to kind of settle and build your shop in there?
Well, really, the first time I went to anywhere, I went to Allentown because they had my name. So I went to Allentown. And then I came back, over there by Pennsylvania, and I went there, and Hilly Rife, who promoted speedways. First, we actually went to Williams Grove, and we parked in there, and we didn't know it. I had a 46-4 with a Lincoln motor trailer. We parked in the garage, and we'd go in there and play and run around this old house. And the guy, Rich Wine, at the time, I thought we were really gypsies. He kicked us out of there. So then I went down and seen Hilly, and Hilly took us in, and we ran for Hilly for a while. And then we ran Williams Grove and went to the area because they ran 3 times a week. And it's still the thing. If you're not running the All-Stars or the Outlaws, Pennsylvania's where to run.
Were you racing professionally back then, or did you have another job?
When I first went north, what I always did, I worked in the winter, and I'd race up there, and I'd go back home and worked at Waller Aircraft, and then it seemed like I missed out on some deals in the wintertime when people sold stuff, so I said, I'm going to start staying up there, and then I went to work at Bowling McLaughlin in the wintertime, and when racing came, I just raced.
We were told to ask you, a story about kind of that time in your life when you were found sleeping in the ticket booth at the Lincoln Speedway.
I did all that kind of stuff. I mean, I didn't think it was anything. I just did whatever it took to what I thought it took to race. Yeah, when I got there, that's where Hilly met us. We were there, and the ticket booth, we opened it up, and door was open. I went outside there, and we just lay there and slept. I have the same thing at Susquehanna one time. I come there with that 46-4. They said high off the ground. We slid underneath the thing to feel the engine heat until the next morning of racing. The guy said, "You gonna race here tonight?" I said, "Maybe." And I said, "We're just figuring out what kind of junk we can maybe go sell at the junkyard there to get pit pass money to get in." The guy bought our pit passes, but it was that way every day. Showers and swimming pools, or we went down the road. We drive all night when I did start racing, and then we drive all night, and we park out in front of a motel. Back then, the doors didn't shut. You'd wait till somebody left, you see the door open, go in there, take a shower, then leave.
When did cars kind of start transitioning maybe from modifieds and more kind of, factory-based cars to something like it was like a purpose-built sprint car?
It was, I can't remember what year it was, but I know it was around 1965 or 7. They had 30 by 90s at the Grove, and then they started running. What happened in my mind, one of the things, they started running sprint cars. They let them run at Sealands Grove. We had a sprint car, and I drove for this guy up there, a sprint car there, and Hilly Rife wanted me back down at Lincoln, and so he said, "Yeah, we might as well just open up the sprint cars." So then I always built my cars. I just built a copy of a sprint car, and everybody started kind of going from the 30 by 90s to getting a sprint car because they were a little lighter, and they thought that was a hot deal.
So there in the late 60s as well, you started building and selling your own sprint car chassis. Well, what kind of led you to go into business for yourself like that?
Well, you have to find some way to survive in the winter, so I thought, well, I'll build some race cars. And then it seemed, I remember being one time, I think it was Hagerstown, I had sold about 6-7 race cars, and I'm running about 7th, and all the cars in front of me are mine. I thought, well, you know what, I don't know if this is a very smart deal.
When did you get out and start traveling outside of Pennsylvania to go chase races and try to go to some of those bigger money shows?
I did it, I think, from day one that they had one, because I always had the philosophy. When I used to hear guys be running at home, it's what I call home Pennsylvania there, and they'd be crying about the purse, I said, don't cry about them if you're still running there at them. If they got a race down the road paying back then $1,500 or $2,000 or $3,000 to win, go to that race. Let the promoters know that you got the what they call the people they want to see. Let them know that by going to them races. So when I seen a race somewhere or anywhere. And also, you got to be able to. I was going good at the time. You got to be able to go good. But I'd go to that race and usually be right there to win the race. So I always went to all them kind of races.
How aware were you of the other drivers kind of around the country that were really good? Did you guys hear about those type of guys, or, was it not something like maybe you didn't know those guys until you showed up to race them at some point?
No, you heard about the different guys or seen them different places that went well, and so you read about them, and you because Speed Sport was our Bible, and you'd read about where the racetracks were, what was doing. You read about these different guys winning, so you kind of knew a lot about them, so you paid attention to them when you seen them.
So 1978 rolls around. Ted Johnson gets the Outlaw Series started. You got a couple wins that first year, third in the points. How did you even first hear that this series is getting put together, and what kind of led you to go chase those points in that series that first year?
Well, we have a lot of different avenues that went to that. I feel like in my mind, what happened, a lot of things timing, and Ted Johnson, a couple years before that, he tried to do something like that. He had a race in Louisiana, and he called 3 or 4 of us up, and we came down there and ran it. And he said he had an idea of getting a group of us together, maybe going to a race here, there, and promoter and doing this. Well, that phased off. We didn't hear no more about it. Well, W. May and I were sitting in my office, and there was a thing Bob Trossel had that Wolfgang, if they had anybody that was like king of the outlaws, it'd be Doug Wolfgang, because he won 40 races. And we said, well, that ain't right. He won 40 races when a lot of times they had a rain out, they called that a race, and et cetera, and everybody's not there. It should be off the guy that wins the most money traveling the country, like Ferkel at the time, and maybe me or anybody there was about 5 guys that traveled around these big races. Well, we felt like that should be the king of the outlaws. So I called Ted up, and I said, Ted, we have an idea. We should do a point system. He said, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, there's only about 5 of us that run for it, just some sheet. And at the time, everything evolved from everything. But we'll send you in the money what we won that week, and we'll keep track of the guys, because there's only about 5 or 6 of us that really chased the whole thing to do it. And he did a little bit something. So he started talking to people a little bit, and we went to Florida, and the first race of the Outlaws, they say it was Texas, but it was Florida. And then he got with Lanny and different people, and they talked it over, and it says, you got something here. So they changed that to the first race was actually Dallas. Well, I wasn't even at that race, but that was the start of it. And then after they ran the first year, they were doing point races to keep track of any race that paid $2,000 more to win. Well, other promoters would say, well, I can't pay that money, but they'd show up and they'd see these little bit of group of guys show up that we'd gathered up there to go do that, and they'd say, you know what, we can do this, because they were getting a crowd. Well, then they decided that they were going to organize it and make it an outlaw show. And Ted was, I believe, with Lanny and different people, Ferkel and everybody got together on this thing. Everything evolved from each different thing, and then they started putting together. And that's why at the beginning the tracks were zigzaggy and all over the place. They think we zigzag now. We zigzag back then, open trailers and doing whatever it took. But that's, to me, how it evolved. Ted loved it. He wanted to do it. Everybody had a passion for it. We wanted to do it, and there it went. And Ted was the right guy for us in the beginning, because he would tell us what we wanted to hear and what the promoter wanted to hear. And we didn't want to. Outlaw drivers were outlaw drivers. We were like redneck drivers, and we wasn't going to listen to nobody but ourselves. And so Ted listened to us that way and did a good job.
Do you know the first time you heard that word outlaw for a driver? Do you know where that came from?
Well, yeah, I believe I do. The way I seen it was back then they had IMCA, URC, they had the other tracks. Well, and USAC and whatever. Well, anytime you ran another racetrack, they called that an outlaw race. So that, to me, were the outlaw term. If you wasn't running under USAC or IMCA or URC, you ran anything else, you were like an outlaw.
Did you go in those early days? Were you going all the way out to California and some of those shows further out west, or did you kind of stay more this side of the country?
I did in the beginning. I wasn't good on rough tracks. That's all. We have a little problem with that still today with that. But I would go out there and run them tracks in the beginning to try it out. But at that time, Pennsylvania and our area back home had as many races, and the point fund wasn't that big. And they had as many races, especially at the end of the year. When they'd go back out to the end of the year, I could stay home, and they had a whole bunch of races between Sharon, Pennsylvania, Ohio, our Pennsylvania. They had all big shows at the end. You could win as much money as they were running for, and you wasn't traveling as far.
When did you first start running at Knoxville? Do you remember what year?
I kind of the only time I remember, one time I think I ran third. The first time we went there, it was Kenny Well won the race, Opperman and I, and we went there with the wings, and I think that about the first time I went there.
Was that race, did it have the kind of the prestige that it has now? Did everybody think of that race as a big race?
Well, to me, all races were big. I used to think Manzanita, Knoxville. I liked that. When I went to them races, they had more. They built them up more. They ran more. You felt like you did more to them. In fact, that's another reason. That's how I met Ted Johnson when he did that. When I first dealt in Louisiana, I wanted Pennsylvania to do the same thing, because to me they always did. Their races were 150 lappers and they were 100. I call them happy day reruns, because it was always the same guys there. They wouldn't deal the people to come in. They wouldn't get them there, and I wanted them to have the same impact I seen at Manzanita and at Knoxville, and so that's why I called Ted to come up there, and he did promote a race at Lincoln Speedway that we tried to do to kind of show them, and it was, to me, it was successful, and they got to see some of these guys. Run the wall and drive different, and so to me, it definitely hasn't gotten bigger. I mean, in the last I don't know 5 years or something, a lot of these guys have taken their racetracks and really built them up in really nice facilities. So I like to see that, because when I was younger, I hated going to a racetrack and you'd win a race and there's nobody in the stands, because you say, we ain't coming back here, I bet. But we like the stands full, and people are doing it. They're fixing their place up and looking good. The Outlaws have grown tremendous. They're the biggest thing going as far as sprint cars.
In those early days, obviously, you guys were racing both wing and non-wing, depending on which track you were at, which night of the week. How difficult was that transition, jumping back and forth between those cars?
Well, I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Now, today, I think it'd be more, because now the guys that don't run the wings, they've got their cars more, what I call, they know what they're doing with them better than we would just to jump in them. We'd have to maybe not that they couldn't do it, but I'm glad they don't. I just think without the wings, we'd have had no wings on this whole time with the Outlaws. We'd have had a lot more guys hurt. But I mean, that's pros and cons, but that's the way I look at it.
And so, in looking at the numbers here, I'm trying to see the years that you ran full time. You were a full time Outlaw through the 1993 season. Is that correct?
As far as full time, I don't know about. I was full time with them all the time, except for going to California and different places. I stayed back. I would go in and go out sometimes.
So then you run, whatever full time up through 93, and then did you pull back and then just go run Pennsylvania, or what did you do after that?
I'm trying to think. 93, did I race after that? I don't even know what year that'd be. No, I ran up to 97. No, I just ran different races, Outlaws, All Stars, or whatever it was.
So then after that, you finish up your career, and then when do you kind of get going with Logan and Jacob, trying to get their careers going?
Well, at the go-kart track, we had like little sprint cars, little midgets, and they ran there, and Logan seemed to do really good, and Jacob went good too. And then we went to Hunterstown with the go-karts. Jacob, he lived in Indy, so he'd only be back there for a few races, but Logan seemed to excel at the go-kart races. And I've always been, whatever money I got's laying in my pocket. And so we turned around, a guy gave us a frame, and different friends I knew gave us different parts, and Don out helped us on a motor, and Logan, he let us run his 358 first, and then to try it out, and then we jumped, we got a motor somehow through different people helping us, and Logan started running. Well, we actually started doing really good with the 358, so everything was kind of like evolved, and then we went to 410, and with 410, there's no way I could keep up with the expense of the thing. Well, I had a sponsor, Maury Thomas, that would always help me out through my years of racing. And he turned around and he said, you need to go run the Outlaws. I said, well, I'm not ready for it. And I said, but you know what? I'll never be ready for it, really. And so that's when I decided to get my old trailer back out, throw 2 cars in that thing, go on the road, because it said so for the free pit passes, for the tow money, And I had another sponsor, Mark Pell, that always helped me. He had a Shell card, and he with that Shell card, I could get free fuel at all them places. So he got me to most of the races. And Marty, he was calling up every Shell station, could a rig like a tractor trailer fit in your gas station to get diesel fuel. And we went in a lot of places, an awful lot of side roads to get fuel. But that's how we made it the first year. And then guys like Charlie Don Ott by rebuilding our motors for free, and Charlie Garrett for selling me all his used good parts that came off Jason Myers' motors, and they were good parts because he wasn't rough on the motors. And so I got all that stuff. And Poncho next door, he sold me a couple. They sold me stuff on time, and he had a couple blocks there. Well, the first year we ran, we had 2.5 motors, one for each car and a half a spare. Well, then the boys were only allowed to run a few laps and pull out to save the motors to get to the next race to do whatever. And then we kept evolving. And then Logan, I wanted him to run more to get more experience and run. Jacob pull out, and now I got to where I wanted them both to run the whole race and then to learn how to run. But it's been an involvement of learning how to do and what to do and balancing things out, how to make it.
When you look at the success that Logan and Jacob have started having now, Logan getting a win on one of the prelim nights at the Knoxville Nationals on a big stage like that, what kind of sense of pride is it for you seeing the success they're having with the operation that you guys have built?
Well, it's a lot of pride. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm lucky I get to do this. My two boys, you get this vision. Once you start getting out there, you got this vision. I mean, I remember going to Knoxville and neither one of them making the show, and we'd sleep out on the back stretch in the toter home, walk around in the morning, sit on the corner racetrack, and picture both them boys are going to be on the front row one day at Knoxville. Of course, Stevie Smith said to me, well, I picture me on the front row. Why don't you picture him running first and second? He was right. So I got to get that vision a little taller sometimes.
Of course, talk about Knoxville Nationals. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about your win of the Knoxville Nationals back in 1990. It's kind of one of the hallmark Bobby Allen moments I think a lot of people think of. But having to run down Sammy Swindell late in that race in 1990, where does that win still rank for you?
Now, let me get this story straight because I just went through that again. I go through it once in a while. I started third. Sammy started fifth. We ran the whole race, and I could get away from Sammy a little bit, but he wasn't that far back a little bit. We had a couple restarts. On the one restart, the one we're talking about was like 3 or 4 laps to go, and I was running the bottom. If there was no bottom, I wouldn't have won it. Sammy would have won it. But I went down there, and they had a grease spot, and I hit the grease spot, and I about spun out. And when I did, Sammy took the lead. I let it up to them. And I thought, man, I'm supposed to win this race because Kinzer fell out, and he was the one, Steve, he was the one that I knew if he wouldn't have fell out, he would probably won the race. Mark Kinzer, I knew he was on the top then, didn't know how to run the bottom, that I was going to run down because I was already running down before he had trouble. But anyway, back to that. So anyway, Sammy, he goes to the bottom, and he hits the same spot I did. It took about a couple laps for that grease spot to go away. And I knew that, but he didn't. Well, he went down there, and he got a little loose. So the next lap, which was like 2 to go, somewhere in that area, I seen him go back to top. Well, the first thing I said to myself, sitting in the car, I said, well, that stupid son of a bitch, I'm going to win the race now. And that's what happened. The next lap, I drove in the bottom when he went to top, and I drove off and coming back off. And then I know his story is it was smoking. Well, mine was smoking inside my car, too. My hands were all greasy. I always smoked. But Sammy banged off the wall. He didn't bang off the wall because of smoke. He didn't hit it. He didn't hit any other lap. He hit it when he seen me going back by. He looked over at me, and he drove into the wall. And anyway, I went on and won the race. But that's how I see it, and he can see it how he sees it.
Talking about, learning to run the bottom, that was one of the other things I wanted to ask you about. I saw a quote from you in another interview several years ago where you talked about, an older driver learning to win races with experiences and not being as eager as a young guy. How is that process for a driver of learning to calm down and hit his marks and be fast on the low side of the racetrack?
Well, I do think it's a little bit of an art because I was always good about hitting it and driving it right through it. And actually, I could run the middle pretty good, too. I mean, Shots is definitely, to me, one of the best drivers because he knows how to control the throttle. The throttle goes with the wheel spinning. He knows how to run the car half throttle when he runs it. He knows how to run the bottom if he needs to. He knows how to run the middle if he needs to. He can run the top, but he favors more the middle than the bottom, and that's because the way they run the car, I believe, that's part of it also. But I just had a good thing of not missing the bottom. That's a lot of guys, when they'd hit the bottom, they were faster than I was, but they'd always run in there wide open. They'd skate up. Once you miss the moisture and you skate up a little bit, you're going to sit still. And so there's a little bit of art to it, and it's changed a little bit today. I mean, back when I ran, the tops all got slow towards the end of the race, 90% of them, and you could run the bottom, and as long as you had patience and you were smart about it, you didn't feel like you were fast, but as long as you got the most moisture and you could squirt off the bottom, you could beat these guys.
Obviously, you guys have persevered through the last 5 years, and I'm wondering if the experience that you had kind of fighting and scrapping your way from being a go-karter all the way up to, where we are now, over the years, trying to beg, barter, and steal for whatever parts, do you think anybody else could have done what you have done with this team, with the things that you guys have had to go through if you didn't have that experience in the past?
No, that's part of it. I mean, I've always been able to cut every little corner there is, and some of it hurts you sometimes and some of it don't, but I don't see how we would have got to where we're at now. Well, they gave us, most guys gave us 6 weeks to a month being on the road, and we were done. And I can see why, because right today, I don't see how we did it. But we did it. We did it with a lot of help, with a lot of people on the road. A lot of my people that helped me back when I raced, they were right there giving us a couple of dollars here and there. But all my experience, I just did whatever it took. If it took sleeping on the truck or sleeping here, or like I said, taking a shower in a motel or a lake, that's how I did it back then. Well, they didn't quite have to do that here with these boys, but doing what it takes to get there through my experience of getting to here now, yeah, I do think it's that way. And also my passion and my love and all the people that's been with me, they're always behind me. The people they want to help somehow. And that's what I see. I've had a lot of help just because of my drive to get there and we do it. So they want to pitch in and help us out. And that's helped a lot on, from the used tires, the used parts. I mean, I can go through a list of them, look, he's got blocks. I find somebody's got a blowed up block by my place, or Dean Bowman, who fixes blocks. Well, I buy the used block, and usually when I bought it, they gave it to me, and I paid them later if I got to. And then sometimes say, I just keep it and go. And we've grown from that to where now we're starting to be what I call a. Everybody always calls us a small team. I don't feel like we're that small anymore. We like I said before. Well, I tell people too before what I see one of the biggest gains is like this year. 2 years ago, I blew the truck up, and that was a disaster year because I didn't have no motor. This year was a little bit because of the California raining out every race. It just broke down. There was no money to rebuild the motors at the right time. And but now through Marshall, it did help us because I built a motor for Logan, and we did get to brush. So there was periods we went good. Now I feel like we'll be sufficient with my deal of cutting corners. I still got to cut corners to make this all work. There ain't no spend the end of the world, but if you give me a portion of what some of the teams got sometimes, I can make that be the same portion they got. And I feel like now we got the winter to do this, which is only about 12 weeks, that I can get the motors ready, we can get everything ready that we can, what I call, fight them harder. We won't have wore out stuff as much. We'll have parts on the cars, and that we won't run as long to where we worry about a breakdown or fallout. We think we can cure most of that. And since we've been a team for 5 years and learned, and we seem to have a really good crew this year. I mean, it was only a couple years ago we started, guys just went along to win along, and some of the help was good, some of it was bad. Now we've got 2 guys that go along that worked with race cars before, and they seem like their maintenance program is really good, so that really helps us, so we really feel good about that. I mean, that's one of the reasons Shots does so well. They've been together forever. Them guys know what they got. They know what wins. They've got a good program, and they've got a good team. And that's what it takes. Most of the other teams are breaking up or coming back together. Not that you can't hit it and do it. I mean, Sweet's in there. He to me, he's in line. Of course, we thought Gravel would be there this year because he did so good the year before. I thought he was going to be a big contender to be fighting up there for the shots for the points, and then things just fell apart. So I feel like we're in that category too. We kind of know what we have, we know what we got, and we're a big dark horse for sure. But this year I got projected that Logan will be 2nd to 5th in points, Jacob will be probably in the neighborhood of 7th to 10th in points, and Logan, I thought he'd win 4 or 5 races this year, but I feel like Logan's going to be in more of the 5 to 8 races win, and Jacob should hopefully get 2 or 3 races in for him. But and usually I'm pretty close to my projection, so I'm hoping we get that.
One of the things that we hear often a lot from, drivers that you race against in the past is that you were always around to help, whether that was offering space in the shop or parts or whatever. What is it about that, that is important to you to be able to help other racers out along the way?
Well, I think that comes from, after a while, sometimes you think you're pretty stupid about it, but I used to, I love racing, and I love the feeling of winning, and I like people to have that. So I always like to help them. I like to help them go good. I felt gratified. And then, let's see, when we're racing go-karts, and these guys would help me or tell me what to do to the go-karts and make it better, I said, well, you know what? You were pretty stupid in your life with them race cars, telling everybody everything, because you could have made a lot more money and did a lot better being that way. And today it's more that way, because today the boys set them up. And people ask me how them guys got them cars, or how'd you set them cars up? I said, they set them up. Now I'll kind of give them ideas which way to go, and sometimes they don't listen, but I did notice about a race or two later they listened.
In through this journey, obviously getting the boys their first win has been important. You got Logan's first win at 2016 at Cedar Lake. How important was that, and how big was that for you guys' operation to be able to get him that first win?
Well, definitely it was big, because there's no doubt about it. If you can get a win in there, your confidence gets better. You feel like, now we've got kind of a baseline to go somewhere with. No, it was big. It was big for Logan. Me, I always felt like they could have did it, so it's like we should have already done this.
And now, since Logan is up to 8 series wins, he's a competitor. I mean, almost every single night you see that car up in there. What is next for Logan? Do you see him competing for championships? Do you see him? I mean, is he going to stick around with you? Or do you see him maybe going to another race team? What do you think?
Well, I feel right now. I mean, I feel like that. Especially since Dryden's come along, and even before that, he's been offered a little bit before, but he likes the way the whole team operates. He likes to do it, and I'll be 75. I mean, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. That's obvious. So that's why I keep training them how to do it and trying to see it so they can maybe do this themselves and be able to survive. I tell them once in a while little things. Don't sell the stuff. Don't do this. Don't do that. To be able to do this, because. Yes, then if you go get a ride, and don't sell the stuff, because you got something to come back to. Because I've seen so many guys go along, and they're kind of doing it now, going through transitions. The guys are starting to lose rides and move to this car and that car. Well, to be able to run your own car, and if you've got the big sponsor behind you, or you've got sponsor behind you to stay with you, you might be able to do this thing yourself. So I don't really see him going anywhere yet, because he sees the same thing.
What do you think the future looks like for Shark Racing as a whole?
I think it's looking better and better. It looks real good right now. I mean, we have a major sponsor. We've got a good crew. We know our race cars, and we probably have 30 product sponsors. We're in good shape. I mean, motor wise, we've got a good program on the motors. This is gonna, like I said, it'll help us get better up the road with it.
In also kind of looking forward at things. Now that teams have kind of seen that you're able to do what you do, how many guys do you have now coming up to you asking you, hey, what should I do here? Hey, what should I do there? Do you have tips on how to keep my team out on the road?
No, they don't seem to do that. I mean, maybe somebody like it. They watch what you do and see what you do. I mean, that's what. I mean, it's tough, because I can see them. I mean, I know. Canop last year, they were one of, we could do it, they could do it, he tried, but I mean, just to deal with me 2 cars and 1 trailer, that's a lot of money. I mean, that saves that. I mean, that's basically in the $60,000 to $80,000 range of over half of that. Just the way. I mean, buying the used tires. I mean, most guys' used tires bill for 1 car is in the $40,000 range. Well, my tire bill between used tires and new tires got to the $30,000 range. I mean, with 2 cars. Our motor program with my nephew building our motors, we're way below what somebody else spends on motors. So those are things that I see. And then my drivers, they drive for basically 20% less than the other drivers drive for. Well, somewhere along the line, as it gets bigger, we'll try to get it up there, because I want them to make as much money as anybody does. And I don't care about myself. As long as I can keep going up and down the road, that's all I care about.
How many years do you think you have left?
Well, the way I felt last couple of days, maybe another day, but no, I'm hoping I can go another whatever it is, 5 years. Davy Brown, he's 83, and he still gets out there and does it. And I said, man, how does he do it? And he says to me, how do you do it? They think it's bad going up down the road. I feel the most comfortable when I'm sitting in the seat driving down the road. Hell, you're resting good then.
Where did the nickname Scruffy come from?
Because I used to work on my race cars all the time, and if it was a pile of oil there or dirt there, I didn't mean I just rolled in it to work on the car, so I was always dirty. And my uniforms were dirty, so Lynn Paxton named me that. He just started calling me Scruffy.
How many of these guys from your generation do you keep up with? Do you talk to on a regular basis? Do you keep up with Ferkel and some of these other guys?
When I see him, I did see Ferkel the other night, a few races ago, and I'll say hi to him. But like I'll see Steve Kincher once in a while. Anybody that I ran with, if I see him, I'll talk to him and stuff. Before the boys, the only races I'd go to is when the Outlaws were running. I'd go out and see the guys just to see them, then go away. Then when I started running my boys, I was back doing it. I love racing. To me, it's like gambling. You bar everything. I never stole anything, but I borrowed a lot of stuff, and I owed, but it's fun for me, for the people that stand behind me that helped us grow. And then it's always been funny to me, the person walks up to you, Bobby, I know this ain't much money, and they hand you $50. I like to say, don't ever say that. For you to give me that $50, it's probably your last 50. And I said, you to me is as important the person that gives me $5,000 or $10,000 or whatever. I said, because they can afford it more than you probably can. So don't ever say that, because we use it. That's the boys' meals that day probably. And that's the way it's been. And we've been lucky about it. We don't know what it is. I had a boy tell me that before. You don't care what building I fall out, somebody throws a mattress out. And it seems to be that way. Look at the story. We blew up going down the road, and Ryan Smith's dad loaned me the toter home to do the same thing I'm doing, to go out there and back. Now, what's the luck of that? We broke down going to Attica, and Elliott Trailers gave us a toter for a few weeks to get there. I mean, the people in racing are good. The odds, we stay at people's houses, and they let us come back. So we're good. And we're lucky. We love the people we deal with, and I couldn't do it without. When I raced, I thought I could do it without anybody. I couldn't do that with nobody now. I mean, every little person that comes along and help. And that helps us financially, and helps us just as help. I don't care what it is. It brings the cookies to the racetrack, and fudge. I always have a story about that fudge. I shouldn't say it, but I do remember this one lady. She was so sweet, bring the fudge. I hated that fudge. But she did. I hope she didn't hear that. But every year we had that fudge.
Well, very good. Well, Bobby, we appreciate the time today. Obviously, this being Friday of World Finals, good luck tonight and the rest of the weekend, and good luck going forward with your boys.
Thank you, and I appreciate it, guys.
As we said before we started, Justin, always cool when we get somebody actually here in the studio with us, and especially when Bobby was nice enough to take an hour out of his day on a race day to come in here and sit and talk with us, and hopefully that woman doesn't hear what he said about her fudge.
Hopefully not. I think it's interesting to talk to Bobby. He's and I mentioned it during the interview, but he's one of those names that seems to come up a lot, especially when we talk to some of these older guys that, he was around, he was racing, he was always, there to help. And so, good to hear from him. And interesting story, but before we started this, I didn't know he was from Daytona. And,
Yeah.
I didn't know about his dad racing on the beach. And, this is a guy that's literally been around motorsports his entire life, was, a world go-karting champion.
Yeah.
And, you obviously heard about a lot of that from him. But interesting guy, and obviously has been around to see it. He gets choked up in the interview talking about the boys, and it's like Greg Wilson, the passion for this. I mean, is there anybody that has more passion for sprint car racing than Bobby Allen does?
Yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, you can hear it in his voice when he talks about it.